All right. Welcome to Off the Cuff, back for episode 8. To my right, my brother Rodney from Florida. How's it going?
Doing good, man. Doing good. How's everybody doing?
Another day. Mike, how's it going?
Really good, really good.
Busy man, huh?
Yeah, I've been a taxi all day. I did get to have a little fun though, but I've been a taxi the most of the day.
Nice.
The dad life.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm Roger from Colorado. Tonight I am drinking a little bit of wine. Picked up a little Pinot from the store today. Pretty good. I've had it before. It's actually really good.
Nice.
What do you got?
I'm drinking the Voodoo Ranger 1985 IPA.
Ooh, I like that. It's good.
So yeah, it's pretty good, man. I thought it'd be appropriate. Ranger, get it in the title of what we're watching, what we're going to talk about. So
nice. Get cross theming there. All right, Mike, what are you drinking? Gatorade?
No, actually, I should be drinking Gatorade, and I haven't got my drink yet, but I will be drinking Buffalo Trace, little Kentucky whiskey. Kentucky
All
Brown.
right.
Buffalo Trace, I like it.
Yeah. In fact, while you're warming us up, I'll BRB.
All right. So what you been up to today, man?
Nothing much, man. I've been kind of a taxi driver myself. I've been taking my kids to work. Mia's been putting in the hours at McDonald's working, and Justin. So it takes like 35 minutes to get to his college one way. So and he goes twice a week. So I've been doing that for him. So he doesn't have his license yet, but so he had his final a couple of days ago. So he was taking his final, and you're not supposed to leave once you start the test. But this dude had to take a massive piss, dude. So he's like, damn, am I going to fail this final because I have to take this piss? And he couldn't concentrate. He was getting all sweaty and stuff, dude. So he looks up at his teacher, and he's like, are you going to fail me if I have to leave? And his teacher just looks at him and goes, what do you have to leave for? He goes, sir, I have to take a massive, have to go to the bathroom really, really bad. So the teacher just looks at him and goes, fine, go ahead. So he goes to the bathroom and he comes out. So he was sweating the grades. So the teacher finally texted him. And so he passed, and he went nuts, dude. He went crazy because math is not his strong suit at all. So he was studying and finally passed his final. So he's so happy that he passed this math class. So that was my exciting, watching him like celebrate. That was my excitement for the week, man.
That's good to hear, man.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, Mike. Heard you went on a bike ride. How'd that go?
Bike ride's awesome. I'll share a quick photo of so where I went. Powder Mountain, Utah, ski resort, and it's literally on the top of the mountain. Though this perspective doesn't really give you an idea, but it's at 9,000 feet. So I went on a bike ride at 9,000 feet elevation. There's a quick give you an idea of what I was dealing with today.
Dude, that looks like a Van Gogh painting, man.
Dude, it was crazy beautiful. It was 60 degrees when I got up there, and beautiful weather. It was kind of hard to believe how awesome it was. It really was great. Yeah, it was like 7-mile loop. It was almost like a video game, like riding your mountain bike through the forest. It was quiet, cool.
So do you take like the ski lift up there?
You drive the trailhead, you drive all the way to the top of the mountain, unload at the trailhead. And really, a lot of mountain bike rides around here, you start out and you climb, and then you ride back down. And this one, because you're on top of the mountain, you're just doing a big loop, really. I mean, there's ups and downs, but not a lot of climbing. Good workout though. Super fun.
Looks fun, man. I need to. I don't know. It looks fun. I would like to get into mountain biking.
Well, you know, it's a blast. Like it's something that everybody can really do. But what you have to do is dedicate yourself for like when you get a mountain bike, you're like, all right, for 2 weeks, I'm going to go 3 or 4 times a week and just get the cardio out of the way. Because your first few times, like I went on the simplest ride and I thought I was going to die. I mean, it's weird. Like you get over like this hump, this plateau. And as long as you're not like completely lazy for like 4 years, you kind of stay there. So it's not the worst.
Yeah.
But once you get over the hump, then it's fun and you're not just like in pain and miserable all the time. But your first rides when you're not used to it are miserable,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
super miserable.
I mean, I loaded up my girls in that carrier for my bike
Mm-hmm.
and like took them to the park, which is uphill most of the way. Plus, it was a windy day. It kicked my ass.
Ew. I saw a guy on the trail today, and we're talking like, these things, these trails, it's called single track. It's a narrow, like hiking trail. And there's some real climbing involved. And there was a dad, his two sons had to have been like 7 and 9. But then he had that carrier on the back with the bar, and then the kid, pedaling too. I was like, dude, you're asking for it. I mean, if he did that whole ride, that's tough. That's impressive. Pulling
Yeah.
a kid behind you in a mountain. So yeah, good times. Super fun.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we're going to move on to our main topic tonight. It was Mike's choice to pick our topic, weekly topic. And you want to tell us what it's about, Mike, or you have it
Yeah,
good?
so we've done a lot of different subjects, and one thing I always thought would be cool is to review old movies and kind of go back as adults and see what you really think of them, see them with adult eyes. And there's a ton of movies that you have that you remember that are like great epic movies, but you really have only watched them once, maybe twice, and it was 30 years ago. So I pick Apocalypse Now, which is a little cliche, right? It's sort of like this epic, everybody talks about it. But I've only really watched it one time, and I know I really enjoyed it. I was probably a teenager when I watched it, as my guess. But so that's the subject. We're gonna review Apocalypse Now again. So I actually watched it today, in between all my stuff. When did you watch it?
Well, I saw it. I saw Redux about 10 years ago, and I thought it was amazing. And then I watched it again today during my when my daughters napped, and then I finished it right before we got on.
When did you watch it, Rodney?
I watched it when it was in Mississippi. So I was about probably 13 or 14. And I was in an age where I wanted to kind of explore more mature movies. I was really into movies back then. So, I wanted to watch like Raging Bull, Apocalypse Now, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the Godfather trilogy. So I wanted to kind of delve into like more serious movies. And the first time I saw it, I was kind of blown away just because of the imagery, the story. It's kind of all over the place for me a little bit when the first time I saw it, but a lot of the images stuck with me. So I rewatched it today actually, and I'm still blown away about this. I'm still blown away of this movie. It has a stunning beginning where, you see Captain Willard and you see the napalm kind of blowing up, kind of in a beautiful, kind of a horrific way to the doors. This is the end. And I can't get that out of my mind. And when you first see him, he's inverted. He's upside down, which is kind of to me, it's a kind of a sign of distress. So when you put a flag, anything upside down, especially like a flag, you're usually in distress. So right off the bat, this guy's in a world of hurt. So obviously you see him going through like withdrawals or PTSD. So he has like kind of going nuts about what he's seen in Vietnam. He's really not really well. And I thought that opening was just a stunning opening of just the beginning of the journey and to madness, and I think that's just that was just amazing when I rewatched that.
That's of all the things that stuck with me, that the opening scene was if I can only pick one, is the opening scene, because the lyrics to that song, which the funny thing was, I didn't remember that was the opening scene from the first time I watched it. And in junior high, there was like, remember the Doors movie came out with Val Kilmer?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it sort of came out. The Doors came out as the Doors were making some weird comeback, and this comeback happened. And so I got into the Doors in junior high, and then the movie came out, and the end was like my favorite song. And so I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh man, the lyrics are perfect. Like, this is like foreshadowing his adventure, right? This just
Right.
like destruction and mayhem and misery, and yeah, very good. It was very good.
It even plays it at the very end too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind
Yeah.
of bookends it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's what I think on the second viewing, when I heard the song, I was like, this is the same song they play at the end. Like, I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah, that's my favorite Doors song. I don't know
Oh,
why,
it's an amazing song, yeah.
but
And
you know,
it fits the movie so perfectly,
Yeah.
man. It's almost like written for it.
yeah, it's a better song in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which rarely happens, but
You know, so much of that, I was sort of like, well, this will be a good movie to watch, but I'm really glad I picked it, because there was a lot I liked about the movie, and it just sort of, it leaves you in a kind of a weird place. Because when I was a kid, I loved Vietnam movies. Any movie about Vietnam, I loved them. Even the bad ones, I loved them. And this one, really, I wouldn't have picked as like one of my favorites, but it probably is now, just because I'm older and maybe I watched it different. I see different things. But yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed in this one was, like, it did seem like, and I don't know if this is true, but the thing I took out of it was his journey. Well, the couple of cool things, like the one scene I really liked was when he goes and meets the colonel of the air cav, and how he meets the colonel in the air cav, and just the utter chaos that's going on everywhere. I mean, it's just the most chaotic scene you could ever imagine. And he meets the colonel, and the colonel's just sort of sauntering around, and he's not caring about what this guy's talking to him about. And the only time he actually cares is like, oh, the surfer, you're a surfer? And he's like, oh yeah, he's with me. Oh, okay, now we'll talk to you.
Yeah.
you're talking
That
about
was a good scene.
Kilgore, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
that was
and
great.
what's funny is like everybody's like reacting to like stuff landing next to him or gunshots. Everybody's like ducking and stuff, and the whole time he doesn't flinch throughout like any scene.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
It's like,
So-
man, how crazy is this freaking dude, man? Like,
Well, I mean, to go back to the beginning, when you first hear Kurtz's voice, the colonel, where these guys, the brass comes in and says, hey, we got this rogue colonel that's in the jungle. He's gone insane. He's doing some crazy things, and we need you to get him back. And I think Captain Willard, I think he wants this mission so bad at that, because I think he sees himself a little bit in Kurtz, and he wants to find out some answers, because obviously he's kind of a broken man going through PTSD, but I think he takes this mission, and when you hear Colonel Kurtz's voice, the Marlon Brando character that he's trying to look for, he talks about a snail going across a razor blade, and that imagery and that language really stuck with me. How a snail will get from point A to point B, no matter how much he's going to damage himself, whether he realizes or not. And the thing that's getting damaged is the underbelly of the snail. That kind of represents to me America, how Vietnam was a razor blade. And a lot of the people that suffered in Vietnam are the uneducated, the minorities, the poor. I'm not saying rich people didn't fight in Vietnam at all. I'm just saying that a lot of like the underbelly of America kind of met that razor blade. And I think that kind of represent what America kind of went through, where that on top of that snail, you have that beautiful shell that you see, because America from other countries and another perspective. We're rich, we're great, we're like that snail, but the underbelly of that snail, or there's slime, there's the underbelly, and I think that snail going across that razor blade really stuck with me, and I think that set the tone of what this movie really is about. Because it is about metaphors, and it's kind of a very unorthodox movie. It's not like Platoon or Casualties of War or Saving Private Ryan, where it has kind of like a main storyline that you kind of go through. You kind of have to dig deep on a lot of meanings and stuff like that. But that's why I like it. It is a messy masterpiece. It's not perfect, but as far as story wise, I think that just sets it up, man, beautifully.
Dude, that's a great analogy. And that totally puts those words in whole new meaning.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like, out of all the war movies, like, Vietnam is different than all the other war movies. Like, it seems like with Deer Hunter and like Vietnam, it seems to me is like the first generation of like war movies where they weren't painted as heroes. Like, it painted a different picture of like there's some effed up shit going on in war.
Right.
And
Yes.
we're not painting this picture of everybody was a hero, everybody died, with valor, stuff like that. Like, like that whole scene with like when he meets the Calgary, like what was it, Kilgore?
Yeah.
Like those dudes were fucked up, man.
Yeah, they were.
Like,
it was like a game to them. It was a video game.
Yeah, and then when they meet the guys at the bridge, like, they're all high, they're all like tripping, like, it's just really dark. Like, the Vietnam movie era is really dark when it comes to movies.
And then that scene, right at the Valkyries, when they play that, that scene just blows my mind. How you film all those helicopters in the air, and how you, like, it wasn't, obviously computer generated images weren't used, but that scene, like, people use that scene to like pump themselves up, to go to war. That's so people, they said, is this a anti-war movie or a war movie? I kind of think it's both, to be honest with you. Like, it could be both. Like, people, that scene, like Charlie Sheen, like he's like Martin Sheen's son. I read an interview where he would play that scene at drug parties on his living room on the big screen, and they would all get high and watch that scene because it was that exhilarating, that with the music and the imagery of all those helicopters and stuff. And it's just a brilliant scene, man. So,
as I was watching it, I was like, it was like I was thinking of the chicken and the egg, because like, what came first? There's so many lines and scenes and music and like that people rip off. So when you watch it, having watched everything since then, like, it seems like a cliche, but it's the one that created it all.
Yeah, it's the original.
Like the napalm in the morning and the freaking and the Valkyries, and like all those things, and all these different things they do, and the different characters are like, they've been repeated 100 times since then. And so you rewatch it and you're like, oh, well, they do. No, wait, these guys, this is the movie that made it all.
Yeah.
The one thing I did pick up on this watch through is, like, as he kind of gets through the cavalry and he's on the boat, he's really like trekking upriver. I kind of kept thinking the further they went upriver, the crazier it got, right? So the first stop was like, it's a little bit crazy. They got the lights and they got the performers, but there's still some semblance of like the military there, right? The people are all in the stands, but some craziness happens. And then the next one they go to is like even more insane. And then the last one they go to with that bridge, they're just out of their minds, right? And it's just sort of like, well, he's journeying to the place where, oh wait, who's Marlon Brando's character? What's his name?
Kurtz.
Yes, he's journeying, like that's basically what made that guy. Like, I don't know how to explain it better, but like that journey up the river is like he's going from, sort of crazy, it's war, but to insanity. And the further away he gets from where he started is sort of like he gets to the place where the guy he's hunting is, like mentally.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
that's
you're right.
that's the
Yeah.
world he's entering.
Yep. And all the stops get crazier. Like it's like in three stops. It's like the river is kind of like a metaphor of going into the darkness of the mind. So the first stop when they go to the USO tour, it's kind of it kind of, to me, it's kind of like the loss of like innocence of Vietnam, how, you know, where we treat the women really badly at that scene. We start throwing stuff at the women, where our morality is questioned. It kind of reminds me of even when I was deployed. I'm not comparing myself at all to any of these guys, but some of the USO, they brought in cheerleaders that were dressed pretty scantily when I was deployed. I didn't think of anything of it, but watching the scene, I thought of those cheerleaders that they brought in for a morale. What you say, they were like Kansas City cheerleaders. And it was the same thing as that USO scene. Like, we're there to fight a war. People are dying. And it just brought that to a whole new level, is what are we doing with this scene? It just brings it to another level for me. And we're still doing the same thing, where cheerleaders are being brought to these women, these men and women that are downrange, that are dealing with war. So I just thought that kind of was interesting when I watched this movie about that.
Dude, so Apocalypse Now Redux, which is like a 3-hour version of the movie, has an extended scene of that. And I can't remember it exactly, but that scene was a whole lot darker. Like they didn't leave like when they leave in the movie we just watched. Like it shows like the day after, and like the women are terrified, like they didn't get out, and they're trying to leave, and like everybody is just like really like messed up on drugs, like LSD, like they're trash, they're dirty, like there's like a dead body.
That's the version I watched.
Yeah, there's like a dead body like in the fridge, right? Like
yeah,
yeah.
that's like the other progression into insanity is
yeah,
yeah.
He gets to this base, and it's like the other repeating theme is who's in charge.
Yeah,
no one knows.
Yeah,
nobody knows who's in charge, and nobody cares. It's like, I don't know, don't ask me, and I don't care. And so that happened again in that scene, and he goes and like exchanges. I don't know if it was in the original, but he goes and trades diesel fuel for time with the Playmates, you know, so they could go, you know, and that was like super dark.
Yeah, that's not in the original. That's in the Redux, which is
that's a Redux. Yeah,
that was super dark and crazy. Like that whole scene with everybody. It's a little disturbing about, like, you know, they're there, and the camp, like just the camp itself, the way it looked was trash everywhere, and broken TVs, stuff that shouldn't be there is there, just tossed about. And you know, there's soldiers there, and there's people there. Nobody's in charge, and they're just there. They just exist, and it's chaos.
Yeah, and it's and what's the last words of the movie? Like the horror.
Yeah,
like
classic, man.
I mean, that's kind of the theme of like the entire movie, is like you slowly get, like they pull the blinds back of like the horror of it all. It's just like I remember the first time I watched it, like I thought about that movie for like days. I was just like kind of horrified and shocked, because it's like the first time I saw a war movie that was just like, man, it's fucked up, man.
Yeah. I mean, and when they find that boat, when they're going upstream, and they search that boat for contraband, and it's shit just goes sideways.
Yeah,
pretty horrific, man. And I think that's when Willard was like, you know what? No one's stopping me. I'm trying to get to my mission. And he only fires one shot through the movie, and he fires an innocent woman. And that just tells you how just he's gone too. You know, he might be the next Kurtz. I don't think he's trying to be it, but he's trying to figure out if he could save himself.
Yeah, because he gets a lot. You can tell he gets a lot of sympathy for Kurtz, because he's kept reading all the letters, and he's like, why are they after this guy? Like, you know, of all the things they turn a blind eye to, they're not turning a blind eye to him. Yeah, and you know, even his crewmates sort of take on the persona of every stop, right? They're sort of together. They're just regular Joes, and every stop upriver, they get a little crazier. Like they're
Yeah.
falling into the abyss with him.
Yeah.
And it's sort of capped off in that scene where they search the boat and they just kill everybody.
Yeah.
And it's just like they're really gone then, right? The surfer's painting his face and going crazy. Well, he was just a surfer bro at the beginning.
Yeah. And then after that point, he was just like high the entire movie.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, it's
And then, you know, when you finally meet Kurtz, like he's photographed so brilliantly with the shadow. It's almost like a horror movie.
dude, that's what I thought too,
With
man.
the
That
shadow.
last,
It's so brilliant, man.
the last third of the movie is like a horror movie, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's chilling watching it, and like
You can't keep your eyes off him, dude. Like
yeah,
when he's on
it's
screen.
terrifying seeing all the dead bodies like hanging, the heads, like
Yeah.
this guy who has the influence on all these people, like it's like that. I exactly had that same thought. Was like, man, the last third of this movie is like a horror movie.
Yeah, it goes into like mysticism a little bit and kind of like legends and like, and I don't know if this was in the Redux version, but there's a scene where Willard is in, and he's imprisoned, and he looks up and he sees like children looking at him through the top, and then in the background you see Kurtz looking at him. That's one of the most chilling scenes in the whole movie. I'm not sure if you caught that or not, but there's a lot of smiling kids' faces. And then right in the middle of that scene, Kurtz looks right at him just for a brief second, and then he disappears. I'm like, that freaked me out, dude. Yeah, so I don't know if you caught that, but it's
Yeah, I didn't catch
just
that.
crazy, man. And then Dennis Hopper, that photographer, he's kind of like he's kind of like you know, and he's like the troll under the bridge. He tries to warn him, but but he likes Kurtz in some weird way. He thinks he's a genius. He thinks he's a poet. He thinks, you know, he's like a philosopher. He's like a warrior. So I think he's trying to warn him in a different way. So I think he's more of like the troll under the bridge saying, hey, if you pass this point, there's no going back, you know. But he was kind of an interesting character too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wondered like why he killed Kurtz.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, because he never really. I don't feel like. I'm trying to. Did he think about not doing it for a while? But I think
he killed his friend. Like he cut Chef's head and put him in his lap too.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that kind of pushed him over the edge where like, you know, okay, I can't be this guy. And then, you know, at the end where they're bowing down to him, all the villagers, when he had the power, when he kind of like consumes the heart of darkness or whatever you want to call it, like it's like symbolizes like, you know, okay, you're the new king now. And I think that he comes to his senses and he's like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. So he grabs the surfer dude and he takes him back to the boat where he doesn't stay. So I think that, you know, along the way, he finally realized that, you know, hey, I can't do this anymore, but who knows? It's a lot of it is up to interpretation. So, you know, I'm not sure, man.
Yeah, that wicked.
So, but I heard it took like he shot like 240 hours of film. That's why there's all these cuts. It took him 2 years to edit. Like he almost committed. I'm talking about director Francis Ford Coppola. He almost committed suicide making this film. Like it got wiped out during production of the film. A lot of the sets because they had this huge typhoon that went and ravaged all the sets. Harvey Keitel, that was supposed to play Captain Willard, he fired him like 2 weeks into production because he just felt like he wasn't right for the role. So he hired Martin Sheen, and Martin Sheen had a heart attack, and he was kind of going through drug addiction also. Dennis Hopper, he said he was doing drugs like every day because it was filmed in the Philippines also. Like he was doing drugs all the time. A lot of the staff were doing drugs. So it's kind of a mini miracle that this movie really got made, man. So yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that went into this movie, and you could tell with the sets and just this the scenery and stuff and the photography, man, freaking out of this world, dude.
Yeah, it really is a work of art.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
this one scene in the river where the tail of a airplane sticking out, and they go under it. Kind of reminds me of like an old dinosaur bones or like an old reptile bones that they're going through. It's just so haunting. That
Yeah.
little 10-second image where it's just brilliant, man. And I still remember that image when I first saw the movie of him
Me
going,
too.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
I don't. I remember that like watching it the first time. Like, man, it really is a powerful scene.
Yeah.
Like just the drop back of everything is, or backdrop is powerful.
you know what I well, you know how after they leave sort of the last American outpost and they go into Cambodia, and the river has lined with that, like it's kind of like turns from total chaos to like this perfect imagery, and it has the signs or that canvas that lines the river,
Yeah.
and then they meet the French soldiers, and like I mean, I guess I sort of get it, but I'm not like, oh, this was perfect. Well, perfect part of the movie. Like I'm kind of, if I could eliminate anything, it would be that.
Yeah, me too.
Well-
I agree with that. I think that bogs down. I don't think that was in the original cut either, though. I think he cut that out. I think that
because
was,
I don't remember that.
yeah.
Because that was like a long part, and I'm like, I guess I get it. I think what they were doing was, sort of like trying to paint a picture of, you're not the first ones here, you're not going to be the last ones here, and these are the remnants, what's left over from the last group, and they're they're kind of weird too. Like there's some very weird things going on there too.
Yeah, they're dressed alike in suits, and they have this dinner party, which is kind of surreal. And they have women there that are dressed up, so it's very French. Like they're saying that the French had something to do with the Vietnam War too, which they did. And a lot of it's like, you should learn from my mistakes. And one of them is like, no, we're still going to win it. We're still going to be here. We're never going to leave. We're still part of this. So I think I think he wanted to bring that perspective of the French and the European kind of mindset. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it is a messy kind of film. But at the end of the day, I think it is a masterpiece, man. Just the imagery and how it hits, and how he puts images in your head, and it's just great, man. I really enjoyed it I really appreciated it the second time around.
Yeah.
If where do you put it with like with Platoon and Casualties of War and Deer Hunter and like what else would be in that genre? Other Vietnam movies.
I would put Platoon ahead of this, just because I like the narrative structure of Platoon. I love the characters of Platoon, and I think emotionally it hits a little harder for me. This is more of a avant-garde like masterpiece. It is messy. It's kind of an unorthodox kind of piece of art. And it has a lot of symbolism and stuff like that. I appreciate that part of it. But as far as like movie making, like structure, I think I follow Platoon a little bit more. And I think I like Platoon just a little bit more, but they're both great movies though. And then Casualty of War, I really like. Deer Hunter is great. Let's see. And I think a good underrated Vietnam movie is Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise. I think that doesn't get a lot of love. And then even Heaven on Earth, another Oliver Stone kind of movie where it kind of deals with like the effects of the Vietnam War and after. So.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I feel like Apocalypse Now is, I mean, it's more of an art movie that used Vietnam than it's a Vietnam movie. So I agree with you there. I would say though that of all the Vietnam movies that I've watched, I would say that Deer Hunter affects me the most, like just in any way. And um it's not like I'm disturbed when I watch Deer Hunter. Like I come away with
Yeah.
that. Like that's one of those movies that's so heavy that it's sort of like Schindler's List. Like it's an amazing movie, but I don't think I can like ever watch that again because like you know what you're sitting down to. It's
Yeah.
like I gotta get through this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Deer Hunter is a brutally rough movie to watch, but definitely a masterpiece.
Yeah, and in some ways, Apocalypse Now is kind of rough to watch, but it's got enough great imagery and other things going on that it's sort of I don't know that it takes I don't know it's still kind of disturbing for me
It
that it
really
makes
is, man. It's a
yeah
just
it's
like
just like it's just not in the same way though. I don't know how to describe it. It's different than Deer Hunter. Deer Hunter is like I guess I just feel complete tragedy, right?
yeah,
And I guess I'm more disturbed by Apocalypse Now, maybe.
yeah.
It's just
And
unsettling.
Sarah's never seen it, and when I told her about it, described it, she was like, "Yeah, I don't want to watch it." It was like, "All right, I mean, I'll watch it by myself." But yeah, even explaining it to her, she's like, "It's not really a movie I want to watch." Um, just because I told her it was a dark ass movie, like, you know, it showed the darker side of war, which, a lot of times when you ask people their favorite war movies, the Vietnam era, I don't think is ever going to be mentioned because of how,
Yeah.
unless you go from
Well,
like an artistic standpoint, but, favorite war movies, people are always going to go to World War II type.
yeah. Because you
So,
feel decent afterwards. Like there's tragedy in there, but it's like, oh, we won. And
yeah.
the Vietnam, like if you made a Vietnam War movie where things went well and it would just be a huge, massive lie. And
Now,
so the only way to make a Vietnam movie is to show tons of damage and conflict and failure and you know the worst of it all. Like we didn't get any of the good stuff. Like World War II, you got to go. Yeah, maybe the individuals experienced a lot of horrible things. Of course they did, and there was all the things that go with war. But the outcome was like, okay, we won a war, and it was obviously a just cause, right?
but yeah. So do you think that, because there's certainly a different tone, and you think about movies of each war, and you think about the reception of soldiers returning from those wars, like Vietnam veterans were spat on. They were treated the worst in our history. Like, they were called baby killers. They were treated horribly. Nothing like a veteran of today's status would ever be treated. And it made me think of, is, with as messed up as because the tragic, dark things that happened in Vietnam can't be the first time it's ever happened in the war. That shit happened in World War II, World War One.
Happens every war,
It happens in
every
every
single
war.
one.
But
Yeah. I
with
think the common theme with Vietnam movies is we don't understand the enemy. We don't understand the Viet Cong. We don't really understand where they're coming from. World War II movies, we understood because they were Nazis. We understood where the enemy was. They were evil, the Nazis. So we kind of understood that. A lot of these Vietnam movies is, what did the Viet Cong really stood for? Okay, they were communists, but they don't give a face. The enemy is us in these Vietnam movies. Like we're struggling with ourselves, and that's why it's such an unpopular war, because we can't put a face on the enemy. The enemy is within ourselves. So I think that's interesting. Where I tried to watch Ken Burns' documentary on Vietnam because I love Ken Burns. He did an amazing job with the Civil War. But if you
Mhm.
try to watch his documentary on Vietnam and what started it, I still don't really understand how it started, dude. It's so complex. Like no one
Yeah.
knows how the Vietnam War really started. So no one really understands why we're there, why we're fighting over there. And it's just like us annihilating like these small fishing villages. Like, you know, that scene where Kilgore, he's gunning down like civilians, man, with
Yeah,
like
I mean,
no malice. Like
it seems absurd now when you
it
think
does.
about
It
it.
really does seem absurd, man. So I think that's part of it. But it's like World War One. No one really understands how it started. No one really understands Vietnam, dude. Like Vietnam is so complex. So I mean, I think that just feeds into the reality of how bad Vietnam really was. And you know, Muhammad Ali, people that kind of rejected going to the war are kind of heroes now because they stood up against the war. They weren't like that when they started, obviously.
Yeah.
But
So that brings into like, I feel like the culture of the current time of when certain movies are made has a major influence on what movies are made. So during Vietnam, there was a lot of anger and hate towards uh, veterans and soldiers and stuff like that. And then you get these like Vietnam movies that paint a dark story of what these people went through. Um, so it feels like that the current culture of that time had a major influence on the war movies that were being made. And, you know, if Vietnam went, let's say, went the way of like World War II, like would we have World War II type Vietnam movies where everybody's the hero? And it's just interesting.
Dude, I
It's
don't
such,
think so. Like,
no,
because think of our Afghanistan and our Iraqi war,
it's the
right?
same. It's the same thing as Vietnam.
Yeah,
yeah,
there's no win. Like, you know, people may
Yeah,
say, well, we won, but you can't even clearly define it.
but there are
Nobody
war
surrendered.
movies. But there are war movies that paint, you know, about Afghanistan and Iraq and all that that aren't dark like freaking.
Yeah. Yeah, they're hero oriented. And it's clearly because we have we're a culture that now we have kind of like a military worship thing going on
Yeah,
where
it's like everybody's a hero, no matter.
yeah,
mhm,
like
yeah,
you know, if somebody like if you're in a crowd and somebody asks if you're a veteran or something, somebody feel like there's this weird thing and somebody will go, thank you for your service.
Yeah,
Like that happened to me the other day. And it's like, dude, do you know how long ago that was? Do you know what I actually did for 3 years? Like just stop. Like there's nothing to thank me for. Like it's just like there are plenty of people who deserve a thanks, but like you just to blanket give that out like it's a mandatory thing in our culture now is a little weird.
yeah.
Like it's not negative, but
I know,
it's
but
just
it's changed.
yeah, it's big time change. And I would even say that like a lot of the people, especially where I'm from, I remember when I joined the military in high school, I was one of like two people. It wasn't big where I'm from. And people asked me, like, you know, made snide comments about it. No one understood it. I can't tell you, probably like 6 times adults heard what I was doing and they responded with, why are you doing that?
Yeah,
Like, what is that all about? And it was a very negative, like, I didn't tell anybody what I was doing because I not that I was embarrassed. I wasn't embarrassed, but I didn't want to have the conversation of like, why would you do that? Like it wasn't positive. And these wars changed all that. And so now these same people walk around, you know, everybody, they got to walk up to everybody and show what a patriot they are and pat them on the back and say, thank you for your service. Like
yeah,
you're right, Roger. It's 100% culture and it changes. And those same people, you know, 20 years ago were going, what a waste of time. That's stupid.
yeah. And I read about the Vietnam War actually when I lived in Utah with you, and read the history of the Vietnam War. Not huge, Ken Burns history type of it, but I remember reading stories of that, and it's just interesting that it seems like the Vietnam movie era is the only era that it has a different vibe than most war movies that you see. And that's a good thing because it brought that shit to light, man. And even though it's taken now where people are finally taking PTSD like as a real thing, that they were showing that shit 30 years, 20 years ago, like
exactly. Yeah.
in Deer Hunter, in
Yeah.
Born on the 4th of July, like, and people, watched it and are like, oh, that's tragic. Okay, let's move on. Like,
Yep.
we look at it now and we're like, holy shit, man, the signs were there. Like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable, man. Because Rodney, like for a while, I think it's a lot better now, even since I've joined, is the view of PTSD for a long time was like, oh, you're just weak, like PTSD isn't a real thing. It's like, dude, you're way fucking wrong. It's a real fucking thing. Like,
exactly. And we learned a lot from these Vietnam veterans that we learned a lot from them. We finally started listening to them when they got older, and they're like, you know what? Let's listen to these guys. These guys, they have a lot to share with the country, man. And you ever notice that in the high school and the history books, they never talk about the Vietnam War? Like it's this dirty thing. Like you talked about the Civil War a lot. You talked about, the Korean War a little bit too. But the Vietnam War is it's just a bad time in our history. And like you said, back in the 70s, when they came back, they're like, okay, whatever, you're baby killers or whatever like that. We're going to Disneyland after this, whatever. But I think it's such a fascinating kind of learning experience of what, Americans, how we kind of think of ourselves, how we kind of put culture, how we kind of try to Americanize other countries. Maybe I'm going a little bit too deep on other things, but how we kind of spread our way of life to different societies and to different ways, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, or it could be an ambiguous thing. But is it worth getting to there if we have to go to the dark side of hell to really get, like, obviously if we had a do-over, would we go to Vietnam? Probably not, right? I don't know.
I mean, 20, 30 years from now, if our kids going to be saying the same thing about the, Iraq, Afghanistan, was it worth it?
Yeah.
Hell no. It wasn't worth
it. It will be.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, Rodney, you're exactly right. Like we were afraid of communism. So we go to war to fight the commies. The commies win. And oh no, what happened to Vietnam? We go on vacation there now. That's what happened. Like,
exactly. We got McDonald's there, and back to the movie, when the helicopters destroy this village, there's a beautiful scene of a school and some school children before the helicopters come.
Yeah.
And that image is kind of striking too, where he shows the innocence of Vietnam too. Like,
like a perfectly fine village somewhere with
it was a beautiful village. And like you said, we would vacation there now. There'd be a little Airbnb that you could rent in those little Vietnam villages. And we would surf on those shores.
And we would hope it would be like it was in 1960.
Yeah.
Like,
so
don't make it too nice for us. We want a little AC, but the rest, we want authentic, whatever the hell that means.
It's so dark and fucked up, man.
Well,
but it's true. It's so true. Like,
even the first scene with chaos, like, this is so not acceptable now, but it was back then. He's going out and handing out those death cards.
Yeah,
he's like tossing them on.
He's children. Like a gambler. He's like in Vegas.
He's like throwing them on the kids. Like, we got you son of a bitch.
Yeah, it's
like, well, what?
And there's one scene where there's a dying man, and he tries to give him a drink, but he gets distracted and he takes the drink away from him. Like he's just going through the motions. Yeah. He just wants to kill shit. Like he shows a little bit of like, he just wants to, even at the end where I think a little kid and a girl like need medical attention, and he sends them off in a helicopter. I think he's just going through the motion. I don't think he really gives a shit on what, but it's a game to him. And then at the end, when one of his last lines is, someday this war is going to end. You don't know if he's happy or sad when he says that. And that's scary, dude. The way he says that. And he won an Oscar for that. Robert Duvall is
He's
freaking
so cool.
Oh yeah,
like Roger
was great,
said, like he doesn't flinch at all these explosions going around him. He almost has like a certain glow about him. He's like a boss character in a video game that, he's so powerful, but it's crazy, man.
Oh, by the way, I don't know why this just occurred to me. We've been talking about Vietnam movies and we haven't mentioned Full Metal Jacket. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I haven't even mentioned that.
Yeah, that's a great one too, man.
Because I just thought of it when we were talking about killing kids, and then the scene came in my kids. They were in a helicopter, and he goes, "How do you do it? Kill women and children?" Because he's shooting out of the thing. He's easy. You just don't read him as much. Like that was like very similar.
Yeah,
very similar
that's very
scene.
dark, man. And then that one scene where they're flying, and he's like, "Why are you all sitting on your helmets?" He's like, "I don't want to get my nuts blown off," or something like that. So he takes his helmet off and sits on his helmet while he's in the helicopter.
Charlie don't surf, man. Yeah, but
Charlie's boy. That's pretty funny.
You see how they break both sides, left and right. Like he kept talking about the brakes and shit, man. It was like,
everybody else is like worried about their lives, and he's like, "I didn't want to surf or not."
Yeah. And it reminds me of when I was in freaking the Middle East, and our CEO, he was so concerned about our what do you call it? What is that game that you throw, the bean bags that you throw into cornhole?
Oh, cornhole.
He was concerned about building a cornhole, like instead of like worried about other things. And that kind of reminded me of how you get so lost in your mission that you dehumanize everything else, yourself, your comrades, your enemy. You just dehumanize them, and that's what he's doing. He's talking about surfing. Like, really, dude?
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah. But
yeah, I don't think I could ever watch that movie again.
yeah, it's actually it's based on a book called The Heart of Darkness that was written a long time ago. So they just instead of it was about some guy going through the Congo. He was like a British soldier. So it was written like 100 years ago, but they just reframed it into the Vietnam War. So if you really want to get into what this really story means, if you read Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, and it's kind of based off that. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When Mike picked Apocalypse Now, I was like, man, I remember this movie being depressing as shit. And then like when I explained it to Sarah, it made me not even want to watch it even more. But after watching it, I was like,
Well,
I got into it and definitely I got another appreciation for it. So I'm glad I rewatched it because it's probably not something I would ever rewatch.
Well, like Mike said, it goes deeper into madness. Like that bridge scene, it almost looks like a carnival. The way that the lights are like in a teepee shape, like a big carnival. And if you listen to the music, it sounds like a deranged carnival music. Like it's a madhouse now. Like it's just everything is just. Again, there's a lot of symbolism in this movie, and I think what struck me is that like you're going to Pleasure Island, like in Pinocchio, where everybody's just bad and everything just goes crazy, and they have those soldiers like begging to come on the boat and jumping into the river and stuff.
Man, that's some dark shit, man.
Mm-hmm. So if you rewatch that scene, man, it really is like a carnival scene. It's like a big tent.
So even when what is it, Clean, Lawrence Fishburne's character gets killed.
Yeah, he's so good, man.
And that tape of his mom talking is still playing, man.
Yeah.
Like that's a rough scene, man. Like,
dude, so many Vietnam movies do that with the tape from back home. And Platoon did the best one. Do you remember Platoon where was it Platoon and they played he played the tape. He was kind of excited to hear his girlfriend, and it was just playing the tape, and she was just sending a message like, I'm so worried about you guys, and I just want you to come home. And like they all just were listening. They were gonna tease him, but then they all just got real quiet. Was that Platoon?
I don't remember. I haven't seen Platoon in a long time. I don't remember much of it
It's
all.
really is another depressing movie, Raj. Like I rewatched it maybe 2 years ago with Justin, and it really shook Justin too. Like that Platoon is one of the most like
Oh.
one of the most just devastating movie, and it's just acted so well with like Tom Berenger and William Defoe. Those actors are just, I mean, it's just an amazing movie also. But is it a coincidence that Martin Sheen did Apocalypse Now and his son Charlie Sheen did
yeah.
Platoon, which is, you know, considered some of the best Vietnam movies of all time. But
I could watch Platoon again easily, and I could watch Full Metal Jacket again easily. And if my kid was like, I want to watch a serious Vietnam movie, I could probably watch Deer Hunter maybe again. But Full Metal Jacket and Platoon I could watch, like, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, Full Metal Jackets. The first third of that movie is iconic and phenomenal. So
Yeah, that's accurate.
all right, so 1 out of 10, Mike. What is Apocalypse Now to you?
What's 10?
1 out of 10, or 1 out of, you know, is it a like a full blown masterpiece? Is it like, you know, what is the one thing that you don't like about the movie before we wrap this up, or you think it's perfect, or?
No, it's not perfect. The storyline and the, you know, getting from point A to point B, maybe intentionally, but it's a little too difficult to follow. Like you're right. It's more about imagery than it is about storyline. But that's a negative too. Like, I don't just want to watch an artistic film to get, great scene after great scene if they're not really connected really well. But that isn't like a huge problem, but it is a problem. And it does have like that whole French scene, like, that I'm just not digging. But I would say that if 10 is my all-time favorite movie, I would say Apocalypse Now is like an 8.7 maybe, or something like that. And the things I don't like about it, yeah, it's just the flow of the storyline. It's like I don't really like that part, but it really makes up for it and masks it by the way all the characters are built into it so well. And even the ones that don't stay in very long are built into it so well. Like Robert Duvall isn't in that for very long.
Yeah.
How many scenes does he really have?
Yeah.
And they're all really amazing. And so almost every character does that. So it sort of hides it.
Yeah.
Good points, man. How about you, Raj?
How about you?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it I'd give it an 8. Maybe an 8.5. It's definitely a movie everybody should watch. Every American should watch this movie. It doesn't paint a beautiful picture of war, and I think we need to see that as Americans, especially in today's culture of, thinking every person who's put on the uniform is, automatic hero. And I don't know, it puts a lot of people think about war, and it's like it's glorified so much, But if we had more movies like Apocalypse Now, would it be glorified so much? I mean, I don't know, man. It's such a powerful movie. So I don't, maybe I give it a 9 because of how powerful the movie could be if you really look at it like that. And it's, man, it's definitely, it's not a war movie. It's a artistic movie based around a war that's kind of a horror movie. Like it's a lot of different things. Um, it's got iconic lines in it that even if you've never seen the movie, when you watch it and you hear it, you're like, oh, I've definitely heard that before. You know, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Yeah, so I'm gonna say 8.5. A definite must see movie for anyone who's watching this who hasn't seen it. Go watch it.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of your points, guys. I honestly think this is a 9.5 for me, just because the character of Colonel Kurtz, I would love to. He's so fascinating to me, how he got to where he is, and he's treated such like a mystical character, and he's horrifying. He's evil. He's complex. He's smart. If you like, they talk about him a lot, how he went to West Point, how he's a special forces
Yeah.
guy. So I think he's one of the most fascinating characters in movie history. And then Kilgore, he's one. I mean, I think a lot of that overpowers just the story structure. How it doesn't really have a story structure too much, and there's a lot of ambiguous to it. I think it's a bold, messy masterpiece. So I give it a 9.5, just because the imagery and the interpretation. I think Francis Ford Coppola, the director, wanted you to think about this movie. He didn't want to feed you the answers. He wanted you to think for yourself. He wanted you to do a lot of heavy lifting. And boy, do I do a lot of heavy lifting when I watch this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it great. You know, it could mean different. Now, 2 years from now, when I rewatch this, it could be an 8 or a 7. It's just always evolving in my mind,
Yeah.
this movie.
It really could mean a lot more. And
exactly. You could go down this rabbit hole of this movie, you know, layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
And then come out either depressed or whatever. But good movie to review, man.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good choice, Mike. I will say I wasn't excited, but now after watching it again and talking to you guys about it, I almost want to go watch it again.
Dude,
I mean, you could watch it in pieces.
I gotta find the 2-hour version, because that 3-hour version, I can't get through it again. I mean, I was like, well, because it was the only version I had, and I was like, this isn't.
Yeah,
this has got to be like an extended cut or something.
That French scene is long and drawn out, Mike. I don't like that French scene at all, man.
Yeah, that 3-hour version is long. Yeah, but all right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Last words, anybody? Roddy?
No, just how I enjoy watching the movie. I just, you know, I love art at its most complex form sometimes, or sometimes I just want to watch the Goonies or freaking, you know, Back to the Future 2. So there's both sides of that, you know. This movie is a lot of heavy lifting, and I enjoy that part. So good stuff, guys. I learned a lot from your analysis and Mike's analysis that I didn't see in the film either. So,
Mike, what you got?
Rodney wrapped it up really well. Good job, Rodney.
I agree. Good topic. Next week I don't know, we'll figure something up offline. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with us. Everyone have a good night. All right, bye. Oh wait, let's see.